all of the development risk, all of the possible failure that it can be. And I brought here an IBD, Investors Business Daily, issue that was from April 10, which is really 90 days ago, that said real estate is dying in America. But the city, instead of letting the developers take on all this risk, you forced the city taxpayers to pay $40 million for that land, develop a project that really is a residential project, and it looks like it's likely going to be a lot of welfare there. And it's 2,400 units that start at 400 square feet per unit. This is not Westminster. But the city council majority voted for this. I know that Bruce Baker voted against it because it was designated as an urban renewal area. And what does that mean? That means all the income that comes in from that project doesn't go to fund its fire, its school needs, its police needs, all of its city needs. It doesn't do that. But you did, in order to pass this huge project that's now up to $160 million you've spent, at least without a vote of the people, that means that we have to pay the tax. We have to pay all that service for that project, the Westminster Mall, the new downtown. I mention this because this is in line with the same kind of habits that you're doing with giving Alamo a real sweet deal. They don't have to pay for the cost for basically their business in this mall. So please vote no. I suspect that Bruce Baker will vote no on this. The other thing that I wanted to mention is Sanctuary City. And I have 40 seconds, which is that the United States allows more legal immigrants every year than 190 other nations combined. We do our part. We want to stand for the rule of law. We do not want illegals to think that they are entitled to our country and then just take and take and take. So it's very important that we have a city council that stands for the rule of law, not for a sanctuary city. We're not required to pay for them. We want to defend our borders.
Is there anyone else who has any comments that they would like to bring forward as public comment? Go ahead, please. Identify yourself since you're not signed up, please.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Dave DeMont. I live at 9640 West 105th Way. First off, I'd like to thank the city for a wonderful 4th of July celebration that was spectacular to go and celebrate with people from all different parts of the political spectrum that love this country. I think that's really important that we get to do that as a community, and it was a fantastic display, and I give the city some kudos for that. The other thing I want to talk about, as you know, I'm a candidate this November going for one of the seats for city council. And as part of my candidacy, just like many of you, I'm out walking. I was walking the neighborhood with the towers, and some of the things I would like to share with you that I heard from those residents was, frankly, it was despair, it was frustration. Not as much anger as I hear that people are saying they have. It was frustration. They don't know what to do. I was taken on a tour of the site. I went and looked at those views. None of those pictures do justice to that view. I took pictures myself hoping to capture some of those views. You know what? They don't do justice. I can see all the way to the building, the commercial park in Countryside area by me. I can see all the way to DIA from that hill. It's a wonderful view, and I understand why the people are frustrated and concerned with it. The other thing that I would speak is City Manager Tripp, you talked about wanting more input, and kudos for saying that, but frankly, you guys are the representatives who represent us. You should be out there, you should go tour that site, and I hope that you do that, and I hope that we at least take some time, go back and make the people feel like they're being heard. There's a difference between listening and hearing, and I think anybody who knows that, if you have an emotional tie to something, think of maybe your spouses. You're all married. You have an emotional tie with your spouse. You have a disagreement with your spouse, and they don't feel like you're listening, and you just say, I am listening when they say you're not hearing me. You know what? You're not feeling like they're listened to. That's what I heard from the people as I walked that neighborhood. They don't feel like they're being heard, and I understand why. You need more time for more input, which I think has been recognized, and at least you said we understand that. So what's the harm in taking some more time, going and spending some time, listening to those citizens and making sure they at least feel heard? I don't know at the end of the day what the right solution is going to be. People who are smarter than me, who are engineer degree, are going to make that decision ultimately. But that input does no good if you don't actually take the time to listen, hear, and weigh it as part of the decision-making process. So thank you for your time and your service. Have a good evening.
Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself.
My name is Martha Morrison, and I'm here about the water tanks. You know, when my husband tells people where we live, he always points to the Pillar of Fire as part of the history of this city. It is a landmark, and your towers are going to become our landmark for this city. I find that really, I grieve over that, because our city should represent, I understand water's important, it's critical, but when I hear things like the water has to be at the same level, well, if that's true, then that decision should have been made when the first tank was built. Because you have 3 locations, and you're now saying they all have to match. If they all had to match, then that decision should have been made when the first tanks were built, which makes me wonder how much we're really in the dark. I don't know if it's because it's just convenience and just rolling forward. I don't have those answers. But I do know that the city of Westminster, I believe in having diverse neighborhoods. I hear a lot in our neighborhood, you're doing low-income housing, and I think low-income housing needs to be throughout our city. So our children, because I'm a teacher, needs to be throughout the school districts. I think we need to do that for all children. I think that when I hear about libraries being built, and I will tell you, I'm grateful I can take my granddaughter to the library. She gets to hear about stories and play with other kids, and then they get to play in the water fountain afterwards, and we pick out books. She learns that the books are just as valuable. We are not just in a computer age, and there are a lot of things this city is doing. But those water tanks, the way they are, I think is a horrible landmark, and I don't think you're servicing us correctly. Thank you.
Okay, final call. Is anyone that has not had an opportunity to speak, did not sign up, that has an item they want to bring forward to council? All right, seeing none, we'll move on then. Next item on the agenda is a report of the city officials. Mr. Tripp.
Mayor, I'm sure that some of you will be echoing this, but I need to say the July 4th ceremonies and events here in Westminster are historical in that for a long time the city has done just such a terrific job. But if there was ever a better year than this year, I don't know what that might have been. It was terrific. We had several dozen staff and volunteers that day at City Park from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And from a spectacular fireworks show on a lot of events and activities. And for most people, getting off the site within 15 or 20 minutes because of the great traffic control, it was just a great event. I just want to thank all the departments that were involved in putting that event on, and it was a great celebration of our city.
Council members, anyone on council have any comments? Mr. Baker?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that if we truly value diversity and difference of ideas and difference of opinions, the time to include those is before we make a decision. Because after we make a decision, it looks phony. It looks like a staged thing. And I think that's what a lot of people here tonight are seeing. They feel they've been cheated because the time to have a meaningful voice in this process was a couple of years ago. And I think there are ways that we could have done it without really jeopardizing negotiations and land transactions and everything else like that. And we really need to learn from this. And we need to be safe on the site too. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Moving on. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Items, group of routine matters to be acted on with a single motion. We have determined that we have at least one item that needs to come off. Make sure that's the only one. Item F needs to come off because it was not a unanimous vote. The first vote because there was a conflict of interest that was approved by council. So item F will not be considered as part of the consent agenda, will be read as a separate item. So items A through E, I do not believe there was any request from council to have any of those removed, so I will at this time entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item F. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that, the city council adopt the consent agenda items 8A through 8E.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And let me get you there. Come on. There we go. All right, all those in favor of the motion as pertained for items A through E only, please cast your ballots. Right now, we have a motion that carries on a 6-0 vote.
I don't. You got it? Okay. I move that we pass Councilor Bills number 26 on second reading, authorizing the city manager to sign a lease agreement between the City of Westminster, Highland Hills Park and Rec District, and Top One, Inc., doing business as Bender's Bar and Grill to operate the restaurant in the Ice Center at the Promenade.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. As I previously stated, we had previously approved a recusal of the Mayor Pro Tem on this because of the fact that his daughter is employed by the group on a summer position, and he had asked to be excused, and we approved that at the last meeting. So at this point, I will ask this is a councilor's bill, I think. Go back. Yep, this is a councilor's bill. This will be a roll call vote as soon as I can get you back up. Ms. Parker, if you would.
Atchison.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Byrd.
Yes.
DeCambra.
Yes.
Garcia. Pinter.
Yes.
Motion carries on a 5 yes, 1 abstention, and 1 absent. Motion's carried. Next item on the agenda will be the item 10A. This is a public hearing and action on the Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. Mr. Tripp, who from staff will present on this? There we go.
We're available to answer questions, council.
Okay. Ms. Ruddy, go ahead.
Tonight, for your consideration, we have the 2017 CDBG Block Grant Action Plan for your consideration. We held a public public meeting on June 29th and received comments there. I think you all received those comments this afternoon via email. This block grant application to HUD will provide projects ranging from the Emergency and Essential Home Repair Program and the completion of the Bradburn Street lighting.
Okay, is that it? Okay. Is there any questions by council? Ms. Pinter, go ahead.
We're actually going to complete the Bradburn Street lighting.
Yes.
Okay.
This funding will take it. So the project currently in process is going to 77th. And then the street lighting in this 2017 plan will take it to Turnpike Drive.
That would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Mr. Garcia?
Sir, can you just give me an estimate on how many people attended that meeting that was held?
I believe 7 total.
And what's our process for letting people know about the meetings, and what's our process for informing people of the meetings?
So we advertise in the weekly, and we put up public notices in the public facilities in South Westminster, including the MAC Swim and Fitness Center, Irving Street Library, and also at College Hill Library. And I also email public notices to 11 concerned citizens and to all of the publicly owned housing within Westminster, school districts, and normally we don't post these during the summer times, but during school years, we ask that the schools in South Westminster post the public notices as well. And then we ask for some of our community partners to share the public notices to their neighbors and members of their groups.
Any other questions, council? All right, let me just bring everybody up. We just, a few weeks ago, received notice from the HUD of our potential allocation, which is still yet to be approved in the budget, but we were giving a timeline like any other community that currently receives CDBG funds, whether it's county or a municipality. Our plan has to be submitted by August 16th. HUD will then start to review that process, and if they approve the projects that are in our plan, which we believe they will, then we will receive approval to proceed with those. But once we receive that approval, we're on a very short timeline at that point, even shorter than what we're giving on public comment by HUD, as to get those funds committed or we lose those funds. So this is a process that we go through on an annual basis. The government sends out notice. They give us about 2 to 3 weeks, but because we know the process and our staff is trying to make sure that we're always prepared, they've already done those hearings. They've already got the projects identified. This is very similar to a number of hearings we just had a few weeks ago at Jefferson County, where they had the same questions about whether or not to proceed with CDBG funds. And that set of county commissioners voted unanimously to go forward with that. Those projects are predicated on where we can use them. And the funds that we get under CDBG funds today only has one portion of the city that we're allowed to use them in, and that's what's commonly referred to as South Westminster. And that's because of the projects that we can do down there with those types of funds. We don't have the ability to shift those funds somewhere else, so we have to make sure we find viable projects that HUD will look at and approve whenever we submit those plans. And thanks to Heather and others, that we make sure that we've got good quality projects that enhance the community whenever we get the chance to spend those dollars. So what we're proposing tonight is to submit the plan by the 16th so that we stay in compliance, and hope very soon HUD will make a decision, depending on what the final budget is that HUD gets, of whether or not we get to keep those funds at the level they've indicated they are proposing, or if we get those funds reduced, or we get, who knows, more funds. Under the current condition, I doubt we're going to get more. I'm worried about keeping what we got, or at least what we have a commitment for. So that's why it's important for us to proceed on to get our plan and quality plan submitted, make sure it's done in a timely manner, and thanks to Heather and John and the rest of the group, we have a well thought out plan with some good projects that we think will continue to enhance our southern part of the city. So Heather, thank you and the team for all the work you guys have done and the input you've tried to get from our citizens. Any other comments from council at this point? Okay, go. Go ahead. Not yet. Not yet. So at this point, if there are no other questions from members of the council, I'll open it up to see if there's any comments from the public. Mr. Cameron, do you have a question?
No, it was for a motion.
Okay, do me a favor, Tony. Okay, I'll come back and make sure you get the motion now. At this point, I'll open it up to the public to see if anyone has any comments in regards to the plan that is being prepared to be submitted to HUD. Is anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the plan or in opposition? Good. We like those. All right, at this point, there being no comments from the general public, I'll close the public hearing. And now, Mr. Cameron, if you'd like to make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the allocation of Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Act funds as set forth in Agenda Memorandum 10A for the 2017 program year, and authorize staff to submit the 2017 action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development incorporating such allocations.
Ms. Pinter?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. So is there any other questions or comments from council on this proposal? Okay. At this point, if you are in favor or opposed to the motion, please signify with your vote. I have a unanimous vote in approval of the motion. It carries on a 6-0 vote. Next item is a public hearing on the Westminster Senior Living Center. Thanks, Heather. Mr. Losman, good evening. You're up, sir. All right, Ms. Gadecki, I think you have I'm sorry, Ms. Opie. I still
only been
remember
almost
when you
14
were-
years.
I still remember you for years. As long as you've been changed your name, I still remember it's the other name.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Ms. Opie.
Yes, sir. So just to share with City Council some of the technical challenges we're having in this room, there was a power surge over the weekend, or a power brownout of sorts, and that's caused some problems. It actually fried one of our TV monitors here, and we thankfully have some technical support here who has been helping us. They actually were here just to help monitor, but the timing actually worked out beautifully. So we're working out some of those kinks, so we apologize for some of the challenges we're having in the room, but we are working to rectify those.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right, Mr. Lostman and staff. I think we have a public hearing to go, so let's go.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I'm Andrew Spurgeon. I'll be presenting the request by the applicant to amend the comprehensive plan and preliminary development plan for the 3.75 acre site at the southeast corner of 96th Avenue in Sheridan. The agenda memo, including staff analysis and recommendations, have been entered into the public record and notice of hearing published in the Westminster window. 3 public hearing signs were posted on the property on June 29th. Properties within 300 feet of the parcel were notified, resulting in notification to 13 different property owners. A neighborhood outreach meeting was held on April 25th. There were 3 citizens present at that meeting. The comments were basically informational in nature, asking about the operations of the proposed use, and there was interest in creating a pedestrian bridge across the canal to the city center shopping center. Mail out for the public hearing did not result in any response from the public. The requested change to the land use and preliminary development plan encompassed 3.75 acres, 96th Avenue in Sheridan. The comprehensive plan land use change requested is from mixed use to residential R18, and the companion preliminary development plan amendment requests to change parcel 11 of the plan from commercial office to residential senior living. The site of the plan amendment and PDP amendment is located, again, at 96th Avenue in Sheridan on the southeast corner. To the north and east is the Highland Hills Golf Course. To the south is the Farmers Highline Canal and the city center development. To the west, across Sheridan, is city open space, as well as the Highland Village development. With this slide, staff is entering into the public record that the criteria for comprehensive plan amendment is satisfied as outlined in the agenda memo. The existing designation would allow residential up to 36 units per acre. However, the site would be difficult to develop under the existing mixed-use designation due to the small parcel size, configuration, and the need to provide parking, on-site detention, setbacks from the canal, and utility easements. The request reduces allowable density to 18 units per acre. R18 will provide a transition from the more intense city center development to less intense open space and recreational uses adjacent. The mixed-use designation in the Highland Village development across Sheridan is a more suitable location for that form of development. Mixed commercial, residential, and institutional office and recreational uses. Further land use plan indicates land uses are arranged in order to take advantage of the open space provided by the golf courses and to relate to the surrounding land uses. Pedestrian circulation has been planned so the linkages are convenient and provide for minimal encounters with the vehicular circulation. The applicant has requested approval of the land use change to the PDP to allow this proposed residential senior living, and we believe that it's consistent with the project concept of the PDP. The agenda memo outlines the 11 criteria that must be met to approve a PDP amendment. With the slide, staff is entering into the public record that the criteria for PDP amendment are satisfied. The requested comprehensive plan amendment and PDP amendments meet the City Council goals for the City of Westminster 2016 strategic plan. Staff recommendation is that you hold a public hearing, adopt Councilor's Bill number 27 on first reading to approve the comprehensive plan amendment from mixed use to residential R18 based on that criteria in Westminster Municipal Code has been satisfied. Also to approve the preliminary development plan amendment based on the recommendation that the criteria in Westminster Municipal Code has been met.
Okay, anything else?
That concludes our presentation. We're aware that the applicant would like to make a short presentation as well.
Okay, can you give me a update on the Planning Commission on this?
Yes, the Planning Commission voted unanimously in favor of this request.
Okay, all right, before I go to the applicant, council, has any questions? Mr. Garcia?
Sure. Reading through the staff memorandum, it talks about how R18, it needs to be near transit centers or available transit. And you mentioned in here that it's not, but given the unusual situation, the senior living center use. Can you expound upon that a little bit more about why that requirement is not really applicable to this particular project?
Yeah, typically we would expect residential R18 uses to be within high-quality transit services such as the Flatiron Flyer or our light rail, something of a premium level of service like that. So this site, which if you go down City Center via Yates, it's almost actually a full mile to the park and ride facility here. So typically we wouldn't be anticipating that type of residential density here. We have an unusual set of facts in this situation. The 2013 comprehensive plan did designate mixed use on this property, which would have allowed 36 units per acre. And given that the companion PDP amendment specifies a residential senior living use, and we're familiar with this project because it came through the growth management competition under the senior housing category. So we're comfortable given that specificity of that senior living use. And in this case, it may be a better use for that location because it really doesn't have the features that we would typically expect for higher density residential uses. So this type of lower traffic use, we believe makes sense in this location. And as you mentioned, the parcel configuration is unusual and it's going to make development challenging for any use.
Any other questions from council for staff before we open this up? All right, I'm going to ask the applicant if you'd like to go ahead and make your presentation now, and then we'll look for public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council. Thank you, Andrew and staff. I just want to give a brief presentation and just tell you a little bit about who we are, the need for senior housing here in Westminster, and what we would like to do. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this site. Andrew just explained it. This is at the southeast corner of Sheridan and City Center with the canal to the south. So just a little about who we are. We are developers of senior living facilities. We typically look for communities that have a documented need for senior living that we would go to. Once we find those communities, we try to identify the right parcel of land. In this case, we actually worked with the Community Development Department who led us to this site. We also then tried to recruit the best designers in the local area to help us design the building. In this case, we are using Oz Architects out of Denver, Manhard Civil Engineers, and Stacklot Landscape Architects. And then we try to partner with the best operators who actually operate the facility once it's open. So a little bit about what we do. We do not build nursing homes. We design wellness-focused assisted living and memory care support. Our entire focus is on not warehousing of our seniors, but allowing them to be members of our community, to enjoy the amenities that we provide in our space and get them out of their units, as well as providing shuttle service and things to allow our residents to engage with the community. We provide a range of units from studios to 2 bedrooms, and we provide a lot of, what sets us apart from a lot of our other senior living developers is we provide great amenities, and we've made a significant investment in technology for our residents, allowing them to have things like trackable bracelets so that they don't need to carry keys to unlock and lock their door. It'll open when they get there. We can then, of course, track them for their health and their safety as well. And then a little bit about the need for senior. It's not just in Westminster. As I'm sure everyone knows, there's a growing senior population throughout the country. In 2015, there was about 20 million 75-plus seniors. It's anticipated by 2025 that number will rise to 28 million and up to 39 million by 2035, which is an increase in the population. 6% of the population to 12% of the population will be plus 75. So there's a growing need across the nation. And more specifically here in Westminster, there has been a 32% increase in senior population between 2010 and 2013, as well as a well-documented need by growth management and the rest of the city that there is this need for senior living here in Westminster. So why we're here today and what we hope you will approve these proposed amendments is we feel we are much less impactful than what would have been there had it been a mixed-use commercial development. We have very little need for city services, police, fire, things of those nature. Also, the nature of the site itself, as Andrew mentioned, is quite a hard site to develop with actually the shape of the property, the canal to the south required setbacks basically on all three sides, shrinking the buildable area. Parking requirements, if it was a commercial or mixed-use property, when you add parking in the actual development area, very, very small. So our use with the reduced parking need, reduced traffic, allows us a slightly larger buildable area than a commercial use would be. And we also think we're keeping the intent of the original PDP. By including this pedestrian bridge to the south, we will be doing that. And keeping, as Andrew mentioned, a transition between the denser commercial and the more open spaces to the north. So one of those impacts is also traffic. Significant % reduction over us versus what would have came if these amendments are not approved. We have had a traffic study prepared, and the average daily traffic volume would be a 68% reduction over the commercial or mixed use that would be there, with peak AM reduction of 23% and a peak PM reduction of 68%. So that if these amendments are approved, this is the type of building that we are looking at right now. We will go through the official development with the city on the all of the details of how this comes together, but this is our current configuration. And these are where we're at right now with the design of the actual building, if we get approval here today. Thank you.
Before you walk away, would you do me one favor?
Yes.
Tell us who you are.
Ryan Karen with CA Ventures.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right, council, do you have any questions of the applicant at this time? Okay, Ryan.
Oh, we have questions.
Go ahead. Mr. Baker.
I don't have a question, it's just a motion.
I have you up.
Yes, I have a question. So I guess I'm confused. In one part, I read there were going to be 67 units on it, and another part, I read something else. How many units are going to be on it?
These amendments will allow us to produce 168 units.
Okay. What's the 67 units?
It's actually 168 beds, and the comprehensive plan has different calculations whether you're using beds or individual units. So the way density is calculated in the comprehensive plan, these are not treated the same as apartment units, but rather beds. So the yield is different.
Oh, that's confusing. So how many units are there?
Since we have a number of 2 bedrooms, it will be less than that. We're still working through that, and once we get into the overall development plan, but we're anticipating much fewer than that. Probably.
And it's like a 5-story building?
5-story for a portion on the high corner, and then 4 along the north, and then the bottom portion would be 1-story, allowing sunlight into the courtyard, and that'll all get flushed out as we go through the ODP process, but that's our goal right now.
Thank you.
Mr. Camber, you had a question?
I have a question. I have a comment. I just wanted to thank you. I'm excited about this project, especially the quality and the focus. I like how you're focusing on building a community, not just the building. And I think that goes in line with the values that we have here in the city. So thank you.
Mr. Garcia?
Sure. I have a question for staff. This memorandum goes in depth about why this particular parcel is not really appropriate for mixed use. But it was zoned as, continued to be zoned as mixed use as late as 2013. I mean, is there anything that's changed? Can you tell me why it was, why was this parcel zoned mixed use? And now we're saying, wait a second, it has all these barriers that it shouldn't be mixed use.
Yeah,
and I know you weren't here, so I ask you to speculate on something that happened in your department, but you're here.
Yeah, I believe, there was a lot of interest in the mixed use category, which the way the comprehensive plan describes it is a commercial category, but it allows the mixed use and residential up to 36 per units per acre when combined with commercial. And so I believe as the vacant land was studied through the 2013 comprehensive plan, that mixed use was located in a number of places where we thought there'd be an opportunity for that type of development. But realistically, upon careful analysis, and we've gone through, I think, 3 or 4 rounds of conceptual plans with Ryan's group, it's very challenging to put a substantial sized building there. So we support the amendment as requested.
And then my other question is, you know, there's a slide of the slides talked about how there'd be less impact on police and fire and things of that nature, but we've had presentations about how these senior living facilities do require some resources from our from EMS, from our fire EMS services. Have we factored that into this at all?
Police and fire were part of our technical review. They didn't provide comments about impacts to their level of service. There was some comments about access and the proximity of the station on Lowell, but there wasn't any comments about any diminishing level of service.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Baker?
Yeah. Is this going to be an assisted living center or a senior living center, and what's the difference?
This is going to be an assisted living center with a portion that's memory care support for our residents that have dementia or Alzheimer's. The difference between senior living specifically is a lot of times we'll categorize independent living, assisted living, and then memory care all under the sort of umbrella of senior living. So in some cases we will provide an independent living component. In this situation here, we are just looking at the assisted living and the memory care.
Okay, and how many parking spaces are there?
We meet the required amount that was required by staff.
Yeah, the site plan that would be part of the official development plan isn't actually yet submitted yet. So we'll be taking a look at that, but the preliminary concepts we've shown exceed our minimum requirement.
Okay, well, I'm unfortunately they're familiar with assisted living centers, and the ones that I have frequented have nowhere near enough parking. It's absolutely ridiculous, whether it's Sunrise on Sheridan or whether it's Crossroads over in North Glen, when all the caregivers, because there's lots of caregivers who come, there's not enough room to park. Absolutely not enough room to park.
And I believe that comment was made at our meeting on April 25th with the community. And one of the characteristics that benefits this location is there is cross-access parking with City Center, the shopping center, which we know usually has large amounts of extra parking, excess parking. So with the pedestrian bridge across the canal, there will be that opportunity if there is spillover.
Thank you.
Any other questions for either the applicant or staff before we open it up to the public? Thanks, Ryan. At this time, I'll open up the hearing to the general public. If there's anyone who has any comments or questions that they'd like to ask either the council or the staff, the applicant, you can come forward at this time. Or if there's anyone who would like to offer testimony either in opposition to the application or in favor of the application, we would also take that testimony at this time. Come on up, sir.
I'm Steve Girding, and I live at 9033 Utica Street, a few blocks east of here. My concern with this, not in and of itself, but right directly across the street, 2 monster condominiums going in, 4 stories each, about the size of a football field, right across from each other. I'm guessing each one of them is going to bring 400 people into each building, plus all the new housing, plus that monstrosity over there, added the senior center. We're going to be adding, what, 3,000 people in 1 square mile? I mean, this is going to be created. Traffic's bad enough now. What's going to be like in 2 years? I mean, it takes 20 minutes to go 2 miles. You know, it takes me 5 minutes to turn on to 92nd right now. You know, I have to wait 2 or 3 minutes to try to get onto from City Center Drive, where that is, waiting to emerge into traffic, a right-hand turn right at the little mini putt-putt course. Sometimes 3 or 4 minutes just to get in traffic at peak hours. I'm talking peak hours. Mm-hmm. What's it going to be like in 3 years? And I mean, it's insane now. And I've spent too much of my life sitting around in traffic. I mean, what about the quality of life that's going to come from all this building, all this cumulative effect? You know, I mean, this is not a Fortune 500 company. This is your stewards of the environment, your stewards of the land. You know, this is not to maximize profit, but to ensure, you know, maximum quality of life, and turning this into a giant sardine can is not going to improve quality of life for my community. You know, I don't want the traffic. I like things the way they are now. What about the impact on the rec center? What about the impact on the open space? Right now, the rec center, I've gone there for 20 years, and it's like a third world. You know, you can barely get in at times. I mean, I'm just wondering, what is quality of life going to be like? Have you ever thought of the traffic impact here in 3 years when this all comes to fruition? You know, I haven't heard anybody really talk about that, you know, and I don't want any more traffic. I like things the way they are. I mean, I don't know, this is progress. This is not progress, my idea of progress. So I'm just wondering if there's any other, I'm a voice crying in the wilderness, or this is actually, you know, maybe I got somebody, you know, if I'm alone in my opinion, or there's others that share that with me, that this is going to be a nightmare. I mean, it's bad now. It's not going to get better. So I'm just wondering if there's anybody that has any comments on what the impact on traffic and the amount spent on, you know, what's it going to do to the retails? You know, when you got, you know, who's going to drive 20 minutes, you know, to go 2 miles? I just ordered from Jeff Bezos, you know, and give my money to him rather than sit in traffic. You know, that's kind of my take on it. I might be a diverse voice, but that's what you wanted. So does anybody have any comments? Am I alone?
Well, these are your comments, sir. That's why we're listening to you.
Yeah, so, well, I've said my piece. I mean, obviously, you know, it's going to have a huge impact, and we know CDOT can't manage traffic. You know, I mean, I drive in this stuff every day, so I'm pretty well aware of it. You know, I have a little flooring business, you know, so I'm all over. I used to be. I don't even drive any other parts of town. I'm just staying in the northwest part of Denver now because I can't, you know, it's just got too stressful spending 2 hours in traffic every day. You know, and then, so I'm just, you know, is there anybody that's got a comment on that? You know, what are we going to do about traffic? Who wants to be sitting there at 2 or 3 lights to get through at 92nd and Sheridan? I mean, it's sometimes 2 lights now at peak hours. So, I mean, that's my piece, you know, and then if anybody can add to it or, you know, has a diverse opinion, I'd like to hear it.
Okay. Dave, I'm going to turn this over to you. This is, since we've heard some comments about traffic, now every project that is brought to the city, especially anything around these areas, we get traffic studies that are reviewed or done by the city and by the developers that bring in this. Well, and what you've got so far with the development at Highland Hills, across from where this is a proposed site, along with this, is there any issue that you are aware of that would be detrimental to the city if this were approved?
Now, this particular project produces 948 fewer vehicles a day than the current zoning for this project. So it's actually less of an impact than what could be built on this property.
Well, sure, I understand that. What we could build, you know, we could build high rises, you know, and really max it out. But right now, I mean, you got 2 giant, I mean, huge football-sized field condos going in on 96th and Sheridan, just on the east side of the street. They're right there. I mean, they're ugly eyesores, along with all the housing that's gone on. I thought that was going to be single family, you know, four units per acre, you know, 4 homes per acre. Now you got 400 people per acre, you know, and that's my estimate of it. I don't know exactly what the exact figures are, so I'm just trying to understand. You know, yeah, it could be worse, but it's still going to be bad.
Sure. And when we review these studies for all these developments, we look at all the intersection levels of service to make sure they're reasonable levels of service. None of the intersections in these areas fall below a level of service D. What that means is that occasionally you will stop at the light for 2 lights before you can get through during peak hours, but you can't design the system to never have that happen. It would be cost prohibitive. The level of service with all the development going on in this area is an acceptable level of service.
To whom? I don't like it. I mean, I thought there was going to be single-family homes there, you know, and why develop that little wedge of land to try to put a senior center? There's a lot better places for it than that. It's not much land. Like you said, there's not going to be enough parking. You know, I mean, it's There's not very much space there for what, 168 beds? You know, and you got to, I don't know what the ratio is of staff to patient, but you add that, and they're probably going to have to add another light somewhere in City Center Drive so the people can get in and out, because you're going to have too much traffic flowing in and flowing out of that intersection and people trying to get out of the parking lot. So you're going to have to add a light there. And then all the people trying to turn, make left-hand turns. I mean, I'm not seeing this as having a happy ending, at least from a, you know, I mean, turning this little square mile with that and these two other projects going, you're adding, like I said, 2,000 or 3,000 people to a very small area, and it has to have a negative impact. I mean, there's no other way around it. I mean, there's no positive outcome come, you know, and I'm just trying to, like I said, I'm trying to understand this, you know, that I wanted the best quality of life for my community, and being a, you know, part of a gridlocked sardine can is not my idea of a high quality of life. I mean, so yeah, you know, that's my opinion. You know, if anybody, like I said, I'd love to hear a rebuttal.
Anything you want to add?
Not really, Mayor, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I think you've got an explanation from what staff has told you based upon the plans that have been reviewed by the staff, and there are transportation experts.
Right.
That we still will have a very comparable level of service. I'm trying to think of where you were thinking about a light, and I know there's a light at 96. That's a four-way turn right now.
Yeah, and it's a light intersection now. It's going to be a heavy intersection in a few years.
And it's set up to be a multi-turn intersection. I'm thinking, no, single turn each of the four ways.
Yeah, right now I can make at least a free turn on the left hand, and that's probably going to be prohibited too. They're going to end up, you know, that an onerous left hand on the red light only, and it blinks, and you can't get through. The traffic's going to get so heavy, they're probably going to make it a double lane. Like I said, I got to go through that intersection twice a day, so yeah, it's important. I don't want to spend any more time sitting in traffic than I have to.
Well, I'm like you. I'm in through that intersection multiple times a day.
Yeah. And so as I'm wondering, I'm trying to protect the quality of life I have, you know. And I'm just not seeing that happening with all these, you know, thousands of people moving in this right, you know, here. Like I said, I'm a few blocks away. You know, I've got to go through 92nd, you know, how many times. You know, it takes 20 minutes to get to, you know, Home Depot from my house and back. You know, I mean, that's way too much time. I mean, they're going to have to get that smart light system in that I've seen used at other places, you know, because it's just too snarled, it's too overregulated, and it's just too congested right now, you know, to properly service the amount of traffic we have now. And it just, like I said, what's it going to be like in 3 years if you don't take innovative measures to streamline the flow of traffic?
Okay.
And I'd be happy to offer, you know, I call Greg Olson all the time, you know, and he's I mean, you know who I'm talking about?
I think I do, but
Greg,
go ahead.
I guess he's your traffic manager, or he used to be, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not anymore. It's been about a year or two since I've talked to him. You know, maybe moved on. I don't know. But anyway, that's what I'm, you know, concerned about, because I don't want it to get any worse.
Okay. And
so anyway, I'm like I said, I'm open to suggestion. I'll be happy to open my, you know, fill in where I can too. You know, like I said, what I do with Greg every once in a while, trying to get, you know, a little more light timing on a light, or get and they've switched at least on a few intersections to get that red light on only, which is such an onerous thing, especially on these moderate intersections. Now it blinks yellow, and you can go on through, and you're not sitting there, you know, waiting for an empty intersection, you know. So anyway, that's what I said my piece, and if anybody has to add that, I'd sure like to hear from it, because
Well, what I can offer you is, if you'll leave your name and address with the city clerk before you leave, and we'll try to see if there's any other follow-ups we have with staff that can try to get back to you, we'll do that.
I'd love to, you know, you know, act as a consultant, you know, like a citizen consultant, you know. Maybe that's to start a new trend.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, while we're doing that, does anyone else has any comments or questions that they'd like to ask of the applicant while we're still in the public comment period? All right, seeing none, then we will close the public hearing. Staff, recommendations on this one? Go ahead.
Yeah, we would recommend approval of the Councilor's Bill 27 on first reading and approval of the preliminary development plan amendments.
And has this been through Planning Commission yet?
Yes, this went to Planning Commission in June, and it was voted unanimously in favor.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, at this point, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll open it up to a motion at this time. Ms. Byrd, I have you up.
Yes. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 27 on first reading, approving a comprehensive plan amendment for 3.75 acres at the southeast corner of Sheridan Boulevard and West 96th Avenue from mixed use to R18 residential. This recommendation is based on a finding that the amendment meets the criteria set forth in Section 11.4.16 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Mr. Garcia?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments or questions from council at this point? Seeing none, this is a councilor's bill. This will be a roll call vote. Ms. Parker, go ahead.
Baker.
No.
Byrd.
Yes.
DeCambra.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Pinter.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes. So I have 5 in favor and 1 opposed. The motion carries on a 5-1 vote. Next item on the agenda will be the item B3. Ms. Byrd, would you please take that one as well?
Yes. I move to approve a Fifth Amendment to the preliminary development plan for Westminster City Center planned unit development to change the land use on parcel 11 from commercial office use to residential senior living use. This recommendation is based on a finding that the amendment meets the criteria set forth in 11.5.14 of the Westminster Municipal Code.
Mr. Garcia?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions by staff or, I'm sorry, council? Seeing none, this is strictly a vote. If you would, please cast your ballots. Okay. Okay, now I got it. Okay. We have motion is carried on a 5-1 vote. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is item 10C, Councilor's Bill number 28 on first reading. Ms. Pinter?
Yes, I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 28 on first reading, authorizing the city manager to execute and implement an economic development agreement with Alamo Westminster LLC.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Byrd. Is there any discussion by council? Mr. Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask why was it decided that we give a 100% give back? Most of the items we have give a 50% give back of these fees. I'd like to understand why we chose 100%.
Mr. Hall, can you and your staff enlighten us a little bit on Mr. Baker's question?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think probably the easiest answer to that question is we were simply trying to find the quickest way to close the financial gap of $700,000. We certainly could have stretched that out over a longer period of time, but elected to opt for a short time frame.
Okay. Do we have plans to waive to rebate the building permits for other kinds of really commercial, establishments that want to increase, the appearance of their really properties? Are we really considering giving a 100% rebate on the sales tax for 3 years, say if a King Soopers wants to remodel?
I focus less on the percentage amount than on the dollars necessary to achieve the kind of project that we want in the community. And then on the total amount of the rebate or the incentive as a percentage of total project costs. So in this case, I think this represents about 5% of total project costs, which is a really fairly reasonable amount.
Okay. In most EDAs, we have the applicant come in and make a presentation to us, but we've never had that in case.
We did have the applicant scheduled to come in, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago, And because of the lateness of the hour, that is, the topic wasn't taken up until, I believe, after 9:30 or so, the applicant ended up electing not to come at that time.
Okay. Do you remember any applicant for an EDA that has not appeared before council?
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact.
Could you refresh my memory?
I believe the most recent one that I can remember, Counselor, it was Zimmer Biomet who elected not to come in.
Okay. Had they been previous, or was that a different biomed company that was?
They had not been in previously. They simply didn't wish to discuss what they might consider some confidential information in an open setting.
Okay, and what kind of rebates and sharings did we make for them?
I'd have to go back and take a look. I think the total amount of the rebate in that case was no more than $150,000. It was an office use, however, that doesn't generate any sales or admissions tax, which is different than the item before you this evening.
Okay, and really, was it in the neighborhood of 100% payback or a 50% give back?
It was probably closer to 50%. I'd have to look and see whether that was over a 3 or a 5 year term, however.
Right, okay. And then I have some comments to make. Shall I make them now?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much, John. I appreciate that. I am extraordinarily disappointed with this. Not only because they didn't come in and talk to us, but because it's 100%. I think 100% is just completely beyond the pale. And then two, I'm sure we don't have any plans to give 100% rebates to our citizens for hot water heaters or re-roofs or remodels or anything else like that. We've seemed to have singled out this company to do this. And from my point of view, I think the reason we singled this company out is this company acted as our straw man to form the GID, which was a preposterous, ridiculous notion. I remember when we had the thing first brought up, and I asked city staff, so is it the dentist or the bowling alley that's really doing this? And I was told the answer was neither. And when I went to the county clerk records, I found out that the 200 square foot property, 200 square foot property, 10 feet by 20 feet, was really transferred on the 5th of August, which is 5 days before our meeting on the 10th of August, when we considered the petition for the GID, which makes me wonder, boy, they must have had the greatest attorneys on earth to get something as complicated as a GID done 5 days after they took ownership of the property. Or maybe there's another explanation, is they were asked to be our straw man, sort of like Robin Anderson was the straw man for Klebold and Harris to buy guns. Now, in that case, it was illegal to be a straw man. In this case, it is not. There was absolutely nothing illegal done, but I consider it unethical and dishonest what we did then. And I think of this as a payback, and that makes me dislike the entire thing. And I will be voting no. Thank you.
Mr. Frankel, from the standpoint of the process that was followed on the formation of the GID, being the city attorney and the advisement of us on the legal requirements of this, were all processes legally followed?
Yes, and the city had outside support from Butler Snow, who are national experts in special district matters and local government matters. So I believe that we did comply with state law in the formation of the General Improvement District, and that the district is validly formed, and the mill levy that was established was done so pursuant to Colorado law by the owner of the real property at issue.
Okay. Mr. Baker, I understand your objection to most of the stuff that's gone on at this site, but I am truly concerned that you would compare anything that this city does to what happened at Columbine as being some kind of a setup. I think you really need to rethink what you're accusing your fellow council members of when you make statements comparing what the city has done as a function to something as horrible as Columbine. And if you don't understand the difference, then you need to go out and figure out what you're doing, because that kind of insinuation is totally out of place. Ms. Byrd?
I just wanted to say something about general improvement districts. Well, first of all, the general improvement district is put into place so that development that happens in the area subject to the general improvement district, it pays for itself. So this is a further way for this project that the city is investing in for the benefit of all of our citizens. Remember, the city, everybody depends upon the city for police, fire protection, water, parks and rec, libraries, all the great things cities do. We can't do that without tax revenue. And we don't have tax revenue if we don't have highly functioning areas of our city. We had a part of our city that had been a great revenue producer for us for years, the Westminster Mall. When that failed and no other developer wanted to assume all of that land, and people who don't remember that history should go back and look, because there was no one developer who wanted to take on all of the land that was there with all of the encumbrances and the complicating easements and all of the problems with title, defects of title that ran throughout different parcels of that property. So I just hear time and time again how the history of this property is mischaracterized to support some other theory of what should be happening there today. So just after listening to that, and I know we're here at close to 10 o'clock at night, I feel like I need to set the record straight. So at any rate, the city is investing here so that we're strategic, and at some point this land is going to be productive for us again and generate that necessary sales tax revenue to pay for all of the things we count on our city to provide. This only happens when a city thinks strategically and plans in advance. We look at the future. When one part of our city is productive, we know it doesn't always last forever. You want to go and you make sure you develop in another place, and that is productive for you and can support city services going on into the future for our future generations. So coming back to the GID, this is enabling businesses who come and locate, taking with notice of the tax. There's no pulling a fast one on anyone. Any person or company that's going to buy land in the GID takes with notice. They're aware of the tax structure. We're dealing with sophisticated people who do their due diligence and understand what the tax structure is in the area that they will be purchasing their property. So that stands as it is. The development pays for itself. And contrary to assertions made by Councilor Baker repeatedly that we're having difficulty attracting investors into this area, I'm going to say once again that that's completely not true. We have several deals in the pipeline, and this is a successful project. So at any rate, thank you for listening to me and allowing me to set the record straight.
Ms. Pinter.
Yes, thank you. I completely agree with Councilor Byrd. I just wanted to add, one of the things that makes me excited about this particular opportunity is when I talk to people about what's coming on the site, many of them reference Alamo Drafthouse as one of the things they're most excited about and excited to see it come in. The amenities that this particular theater will provide are different and unique than we have anywhere else, and it will provide a great attraction. And people are sick of driving long distances to take advantage of other Alamos across Denver, and this will be a really unique and special feature to have in Westminster and a great thing to kick off some of the projects at the downtown site. So very excited to see it.
Any other comment by council? Okay, this is a councilor's bill. This will be a roll call vote as soon as I can get it up. And Ms. Parker.
Byrd.
Yes.
DeCambra.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Pinter.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes.
Baker.
No.
Motion carries on a 5-1 vote. Next item on the agenda is resolution number 16. Again, we have had a request from one of the members of the council to recuse herself because of a possible conflict of interest. And with this particular applicant, one of the projects that will receive funds from this has made a campaign donation for an upcoming election, and the person has asked to be excused, and I'm recommending to council that they approve that. At this time, I would move that we allow Councilor Byrd to recuse herself from this since those funds have already been received. If there's no objection from council, Mr. Baker, would you like to make the motion?
No, I would not.
Okay. Your light's on. That's
Sorry.
why I went to you. Okay. Mr. Garcia?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 16, authorizing the assignment of $5,636,850 of the city's private activity bond allocation for 2017 to the Colorado Housing and Financing Authority for the qualified purposes set forth in the resolution, and authorize the mayor to execute the necessary documents.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion at this time? Okay, and Ms. Byrd, I heard no objection from any member, so you will be allowed to recuse yourself from this vote. If there are no discussions, this is also a roll call vote. Ms. Parker?
DeCambra.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Pinter.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes.
Baker.
No.
And Byrd.
Okay, I have 4 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 no vote. The motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the last of the business that we have before us as the Westminster City Council. If everybody is okay, we'll move on into the Westminster Economic Development Authority Board meeting. Everybody all right for the short one?
Yes.
Okay, all right. At this time, we will consider that the Westminster Economic Development Authority Board of Directors is in session. And I will move that we asked, get off there. There we go. That we have a voice approval of the board meeting minutes of the board of May the 22nd as presented. Mr. Baker?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board approve the minutes of the meeting of May 22nd, 2017 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. First item on the agenda is a adoption of resolution number 176. And remember, the board would like to make the motion. Ms. Byrd.
I move to adopt resolution number 176, authorizing the executive director to execute a second lease amendment in substantially the same form as presented to the board with U.S. Bank National Association for the property located at 5971 West 88th Avenue in downtown Westminster.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will be a roll call vote as well. Ms. Parker?
Atchison. Atchison.
Yes.
Oh,
sorry.
Baker.
Yes.
Byrd.
Yes.
DeCambra.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Pinter.
Yes.
Motion carries on a 6-0 vote. That is the last item we have, either with the Westminster City Council public meeting or with the WIDA Association. We will now adjourn WIDA, and then we will take a short pause, allow everyone to take a quick break while we get set up. We have 2 executive sessions, one with the Westminster Economic Development Authority, which will be first, and then we have a second executive session following that regarding a economic development agreement potential. We are adjourned.